Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. Today, I want to introduce you to my guest, Jenny Odell, a certified life coach and Bowen work practitioner. Jenny provides her clients and her community a soft place to land when chronic stress and physical tension have left them feeling lost and weary. Jenny's practice focuses on learning resilience skills, embodiment techniques, to keep us from the disconnection between the head and body. Her use of the Bowen work technique helps the fascia release and send messages to our nervous system to rest and restore. Today's discussion will focus on how Jenny learned early on skills of independence. This allowed her to function well as an adult and as a mother. Her parenting approach, however, is very different from her own, helping her children to develop leadership skills that come from a healthy development and not as a survival mechanism. Without someone to validate her experiences, she was left to navigate on her own, feeling a lot of judgment and missing the support, understanding, and nurturing she craved. These experiences have allowed her to create opportunities for her children, now teens, their friends, but most importantly, her clients. So without further ado, let's jump right into our conversation. You're listening to Today's Leaders, from Teens to Titans. Hi, I'm Lorraine Connell, a teen leadership coach. I transitioned from teaching chemistry to coaching teens in leadership, helping them realize they can do hard things. We've often believed that leadership is an innate trait, but it's actually a skill that you build and improve. On this show, you'll meet today's leaders who share their teenage experiences, revealing how they developed confidence, direction, and the tools to become the leaders they are now. You'll discover how you or the teens in your life have the potential to become confident leaders, even if it doesn't seem possible. Welcome, Jenny. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so my first question that I ask all my guests is to take a trip back down memory lane and to explore your experiences as a teen and share how some of those experiences and situations helped guide you into the work that you're doing today.
Well, that is a really long journey back. I would say a lot of it kind of started, I was a military brat, so we moved around a lot when I was really young. So every 2 years, up until I was about 12, we moved. And there was never small moves. There were always really big moves. So you pretty much just built a life, left it behind, built a life, left it behind. So I kind of got used to that pattern of not being able to really hold on to what you have as far as relationships, because they weren't going to last very long. So I think as a kid, I know most kids don't really develop really super deep relationships, but I was always a relationship person. I really love being in connection to others. So I think they kind of left a big void, and I didn't really know how to navigate good relationships when I finally landed. When my parents split up, we settled in Rhode Island, and that's when we stopped moving every 2 years. So that's when I got to learn how to build relationships, stick with relationships, navigate, conflict in relationships. And so that was really new to have people in my life that I didn't have to leave in a couple of years. So I think that was a really big point in my childhood. But then when I was in high school, I was in the in crowd and then I was in the out crowd. And so I just didn't really know where I fit. I wasn't in sports. Our school didn't really have a good band that I can recall. And by the time I got into the school district, it's like if you didn't grow up in the school district, you just kind of were still kind of on the outskirts a little bit. It was kind of a weird thing. So I kind of hid in the art room a lot. I used to love to draw and paint. And so I just I think my style was more hiding than anything growing up. But both of my parents, my dad, when my parents divorced, lived very far away. He lived in Ohio and we lived in Rhode Island. So we didn't see him very often. And so he kind of had his life that he had developed farther away from our home. And My mom had a relationship with someone else, and so her life was beginning on her own. So that it kind of just felt like there wasn't a lot of room for asking for the parental attention to return where I needed it to be, which is to help me figure out, how do I grow up in this life? How do I grow up in here? How do I make a decision? How do I do all these things? My mom was an old New Englander, so she grew up not with a lot, which is great because it taught her how to survive too. And she came from a good background. And so she kind of set me up for that. You know, I didn't get my own car handed to me. Like, I had to work for it, I had to pay for it, do all the hard things that nobody really wants to do when you're 16. So I think with my parents really just kind of letting go and trusting me that they felt that I could do it, it just led to this really intense independence. I can just do this myself. I'll just do it. So I didn't really rely on others much.
There were a couple of things that stood out to me in that answer. And one of the things that's been sort of on my mind a lot for teenagers, but even as older adults, the skill of making friends. I think we're not really given a whole lot of opportunity to practice learning how to make friends. I don't really feel like I have that skill. I didn't really have to develop it. I think maybe there were 2 times in my life where I had to. And so now that I'm an adult, I don't really have the ability to make friends really easily. Can you share what you think your ability in that skill is now as an adult from all the moving around and really sort of having to
Yeah.
practice that skill a lot that many of us don't get the
I
opportunity?
would say that's a great question. And I would say I'm really good at it. I love meeting new people. I love listening to their stories and really getting to know them. One of my love languages is acts of service. And so my biggest way that I can show love to people is quality time.
Yeah.
And I love to invite people to my home and just spoil them rotten with food. I should have been Italian, I think, the way I love people with food. So I love bringing people together. I love being in community. And I think it's because I craved it so long. Like, I think I craved somebody to bring me into community. So as a response to that, I became what I needed. So I bring people into community with me because I freaking love being with people. I just enjoy watching people together. Maybe I would have made a good sociologist. I don't know.
Well, and that answer leads me to the next sort of awareness that came from your original answer was your hiding, right? So I'm going to define you as a teen who's hiding as an introvert. Would you say that that is really who you are, or did you mask that feeling of not belonging with hiding, and therefore people would interpret your social
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of masking going on in life.
Yeah.
For sure, especially for women. Like, we're so good at it. We're just born knowing how to do it. I think at that time I was just feeling so put out. There was a big conflict. There was a girl that I was friends with, and then we were no longer friends, and she had a lot of influence. And so I kind of felt all of a sudden I just didn't have a place to belong. And my friends, who I was still really good friends with, they were all guys and they were all graduating. So I think I hid just to avoid being seen by the people who I felt judged by, or that I felt had a negative opinion of me. I don't like being in conflict. I'm very conflict avoidant.
Yeah.
It's something I'm still working on. So I think at that time, it was almost like an act of rebellion to hide myself because I'm not naturally shy. I mean, I am naturally shy, but I'm not naturally introverted. I get a lot of energy from being with people. I don't mind being with groups of people for long periods of time. Although as I've gotten older, I do really appreciate my solo time. Just leave me alone. But yeah, I think I would define myself as a teen. I was definitely very rebellious in that way. That I was just like, nope, you don't get to have this. And I just didn't know where to go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Just hid in the art room. It was where I felt safe. It's where I felt like I could kind of get lost in my imagination. And we had to do a lot of self-portraits in high school. I don't know what it is about that part of the art curriculum, but I had to really look at myself a lot. And that was always challenging. I don't think I've ever been in a position since I was like 15 where I wasn't asked to look very critically at my humanness. And so I feel like I do that a lot. And I think as we go on in the conversation, I think that's how I kind of started to define my parenthood when I became a parent.
Yeah, it's so interesting how I listened to a lot of other podcast experts of parenting and how much we bring our own experiences into the experiences that our children are having and or the baggage from when we were young. And so I think oftentimes we are trying to prevent the experience that we had or adjust their experience so that they don't have to be in the place that we were. And one of the things that I often hear from especially girl teenagers is this splitting and reforming of friendships and
Mm.
you saying that you had this friend and then something happened and you were no longer friends. I think that that's a very common experience for young teens. And we as parents remember that experience of our own. And a lot of our advice is geared through our own experience. So tell me, how often do you find that you're pulling in some of those experiences into your parenting?
Oh gosh, all the time. I think it's all the time, especially since I have a teenage daughter who's now in high school. I'm watching her and how she navigates her friendships and her relationships. I'm very aware that I have like my hand on the thermometer to see how hot things are getting, just like checking in. My daughter's very grounded and she's got really great grounded friends. But this is the time of their lives when, boys get introduced to a mix of things, choosing different classes and going. This is like where they start going in their different directions. And how are the relationships being fostered during that time? So I think I definitely draw on my compassion for the situation because sometimes relationships aren't going to last. Like we're not going to be friends with everybody we're friends with in high school. And that is a bitter truth and a bitter reality for many. I'm fascinated by those who've had lifelong relationships since they were 5. I know people who have had somebody in their life for 40 plus years. I'm like, that is incredible. Like my husband, he's still friends with people. They actually come to our house every other Thursday. He's been friends with them since he was like 15. I'm like, that's awesome. And you made it through all of this life and you're still in connection and relationship. And it's fascinating to me. But yeah, to your point, I went into having kids knowing I'm going to do this differently than my parents did it. I'm going to do it better. I'm going to be a better mom. But even with that intention, I realized as much as I had looked hard at myself, just because you look and you see doesn't mean you take action and do and change. So it took me a while to realize that just because I had the intention that I was going to be a different kind of parent didn't mean I was. I didn't look at all the baggage I was bringing into my parenting from my parents, just habits of being in a relationship, attitudes that needed adjusting, temperament. So there was a lot of growth that I needed to do before I could actually be the better parent that I wanted to be for my kids because I had to say, I'm actually behaving just like my mother right now.
Yeah. I guess the other question that sort of comes to light as you're talking about being the better parent, I guess what is our definition of what it means to be a better parent? Because
Mhm.
I know in your responses to my survey is that it wasn't that your parents were intentionally doing things to not be the best parents that they could be. But I think we often want to do things differently and better. But what defines that?
Right. I think for me, because my parents were good parents, they did the absolute best they could with what they had, with the limited knowledge that they had of their own dysfunctions that they brought in from their childhoods and their lives. And, they're baby boomer, like early baby boomers, like 1949, my dad was born, my mom was born in 1950. So they're old school. Like their parents were very old school. So just generationally, things were very different. Like children were seen and not heard. You had to behave a certain way. And so we were kind of grown up with similar values in that way. And so for me, I just needed more cuddling. I think I just needed to be held a little bit more, cuddled and, told that everything's going to be okay. I needed more conversation. I needed my parents to go to the difficult conversations with me instead of saying, oh, well, that's just for you, but that's between you and Jesus. That was like my mom's favorite line when I needed to talk to her about something like really deep and like personal. That's just between you and Jesus. I'm like, okay, that's great. And I grew up in a Christian household, so I mean, I got it, I understood it, but at that time, nobody was telling me, well, how do you bring that between you and Jesus? There was no conversation about that. It's just between you and Jesus. So I had to figure things out on my own. So when it came to the affection part of what I needed, in relationship. I sought it elsewhere, and that leads to its own set of dysfunction in itself. But yeah, I think for me, I just needed a little bit more tenderness, a little bit more intention, I think. I think we were all just surviving.
Yeah.
If I look back on it and feel into it, I think we were all just surviving and just trying to get through to the other side, not knowing what the other side was or where we would find it or find ourselves when we stepped out.
Can you go back to the comment where you said that you had seen some of your dysfunctions, you had looked at yourself, but you hadn't really processed and done the work? So what have you done to help yourself sort of navigate some of those baggage, challenges, dysfunctions so that you're not bringing them into your parenting?
Therapy is one of my favorite things. I love therapy. If you find yourself a really good therapist, you can really work wonders for your mental health. The type of therapy I really liked, I started in 2019 when I was going through my divorce. And that was a really difficult time. But what she helped me do is called IFS, Internal Family Systems. And she basically kind of helped me give identities to the voices in my head without feeling like I was a schizophrenic or anything like that. But you have like all these parts of you that just pipe up in your mental dialogue, and they're managers or firefighters and they're exiles. They're all parts of you that have been wounded in some way or protecting you in other ways or just serving you in dysfunction in other ways. So this is going 10 years into my parenting journey already.
Yeah.
Not to say that I failed for 10 years, but I think it really clicked when I finally put things into this language of figuring out who was I showing up as when I was in a reactive state. Yeah. Because the one thing about therapy, depending on your therapist, you can go back in time and you can really unpack things and you can process things out and you can be like, oh, great. Now I have this wonderful awareness of what I did or what I went through or whatever. But how do you move forward from there? So sometimes you can end up just dwelling a lot in the past. So that led me to a group coaching program with a woman named Laura Dixon, and she was in Rhode Island. And so we did it on Zoom. My best friend is the one who invited me, and it was just 3 moms and our coach. And it was through that coaching process, that's how I learned how to take action, how to move forward. She was not a coach that had a specific title at the time. Like she wasn't like an executive functioning coach or leadership. She was just a coach. I didn't know there was other types of coaches.
Yeah.
As a coach, but she focused a lot on the Enneagram. That was one of her highlights that she liked to use. And that's a personality typing tool. And through her use of that and her introducing me to the concept of values that we live our life by and boundaries that help us define them, she was really able to help me really, really look at myself and make a decision. Once I've looked at what I've had in front of me, identified who I really truly was as a human being. And she had this wonderful way of just gently guiding you to action steps. And she's like, so what do you want to do with that? What do you want to do with that awareness? That is like one of my most favorite questions. I'm like, oh, I can do something about that? I never knew I could do something about that. And then you just kind of feel into what makes sense for that revelation. My background before I had children, I was a massage therapist. So when I ended up needing to go back to work in 2019, I got my massage therapy license back and I went back to work. So I've been in this embodiment, somatic body work space for a long time. Even when I took that time off to work, it was still very much an essence of who I was. Another act of my rebellion was going to massage therapy school after dropping out of college 3 times, much to my parents' chagrin. I've always been a person to feel into the world, and I needed to be able to continue that. And massage was the way I found to do it. So through the therapy, through the coaching, through going back to work, I ended up being introduced to another method of body work, and it's called Bowen work therapy. And that's where the nervous system kind of came into place. And it was like the missing link for me, where I didn't know what else I was missing because I was still reactive. Like I was still reacting to my world. And it's because I live my life in fight and flight, and I just didn't see it. I didn't realize it, because when people think of like traumatic childhoods, they think of, really traumatic things, not just living in survival mode, feeling like I just needed another hug from my mother. That's not supposed to be this traumatic event. But over time, when your needs aren't met, whatever your need might be, and not unlike the spoil and enabling kind of needs, oh, I needed a new car or whatever, not like that, like basic human needs. And not that she didn't provide it, it just wasn't the way I needed to experience it. And she just wasn't capable of that at the time. You live in fight and flight, or freeze or fawn. And so I think for me, I was just constantly in flight. I didn't fight very often, although I did learn how to get good at it. But that takes such a toll on your mind, on your body. Like, I had no idea I was living in this state of functional fatigue, I guess. I guess you could call it. People would never have known that I was struggling so much because, masking, you get
Right.
really, really good at masking. And when the mask finally came off, or actually the mask didn't come crumbling off, I finally just like ripped it off and said, no, this is it. This is me. I'm a freaking hot mess and I need to deal and put this mess back together. And so when I found Bowen work therapy, the way it works with your body is it turns the switch off. So it's a physical body work meant to help you with physical ailments like frozen shoulders and hip things and ankle things. But what it really, really does, best of all, is it flips your switch to get your nervous system to feel safe again and to find that easeful place of, I don't have to be in this state of stress anymore. I can let go. I don't have a dinosaur chasing after me. It's just a baby crying. But when you're constantly in this reactive state, you don't see the baby crying, you just see the dinosaur. So through all that journeying and all that work and adding this new modality to my life, all of a sudden I just found myself able to look at my world with really clear eyes, and I could see it and I could analyze it and I could identify what it was, and I could actually have a clear enough mind and heart space to be able to say, okay, what do I want to do from here? How can I make this change? How can I do differently so that I can do differently and be differently for my kids?
Jenny, that's awesome. I mean, there's such a clear link that I can see. And I really love these conversations so much because one of the most important things that I don't think we do a really good job at telling teens is that there is no right path. The path that you take is the path you're supposed to take. I mean, for me, I know when I landed in the right space. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was doing the work that I was finally meant to do. And I wouldn't have gotten here if I hadn't had all of the challenges, all of the wrong choices, all of the mistakes that happened along the way. And you just so clearly defined your path that as a teenager, you would never have said, this is the path I'm going to take. Right? But we expect our 16 and 17-year-olds to be able to tell us, because we're always asking, what are you going to do when you grow up? Or what are you going to college to study? What are you doing next? And like the unfortunate thing is that they don't know.
Yeah,
And they're afraid.
It's such a big question.
I don't know.
And I feel like it's such an unfair question. I wish nobody had asked me that when I was young, because I was in the top 10% of my class. I was not anywhere close to being valedictorian, but I was a pretty much straight A student, all honors, curriculum, blah, 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 freaking blah. All the things that looked good on paper. I could have tracked somewhere, but I hated it. I hated it. Like, I wanted to be a therapist, a psychotherapist for a while, but it was the math class. I couldn't get past the box that they were asking me to be in. All I knew was that I didn't belong in a box.
Yeah.
And I also just knew I wanted to be a mother. So for me, like, going through all of that to fit in this box, pay all this money, be in all this debt just to stay home with my kids, it just didn't compute to me.
Right.
I can't do this. Something that I loved, and you had said it about your mistakes.
Yeah.
I just loved that it was through all your mistakes. And when you look back, you can see it all just led to here. And our children, their brains are not clearly developed until they are 25 to 27 years old to be able to make a cognitive decision that they can understand how the impact will play out for the rest of their lives. It is so unfair that at 15 years old, a guidance counselor is expecting my daughter to have a clue as to what she wants to do. The whole world is her oyster. She has so many limited experiences because of, the finite little world in which we live in right here at this season of her life. So the question I love to ask my kids is, what are you doing to still be a kid today?
Oh,
I don't care what you want to do when you grow up. Like, I can see little glimmers of where their interests lie. Like, I have no doubt my nearly 13-year-old is going to work for DOT someday. No doubt. And you want to know why? He just wants to drive all the equipment. That's it. And it's lifelong work. He could do it forever. They always need people, and there's lots of heavy machinery that he will get to drive. So no doubt in my mind, he's going to be doing something along those lines. Or civil engineering, because like there's little glimmers of just the way his brain works. But I'm never going to ask him, like, so are you going to be an engineer someday? What purpose does that serve him except put an idea in his head that he thinks that I want him to be an engineer?
Right.
There are a lot of engineers not in work right now. I'm just saying.
One of the things that when I reflect back on my journey was that the thing that I wanted to do when I went into college was what was happening when I was 18. I had 4 more years before I was going to actually do that work. In 4 years, the world changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And the needs when I was 18 were very different than what the needs were at 22. And I couldn't make the work that I had created and thought I wanted to do fit what was available when I was 22. And so that's the other thing that is so often neglected is that you still have 4 more years. Even if you want to do it today, when you go to college, you still have 4 more years before you can actually do it. And I just want to tie this back to something you said about friendships, right? So when you're in high school, you're making decisions about a path that you think you need to take, and that's going to cause a fissure in some of your friendships because they're going in a different path. And yet it's just not something we talk about. So there's so many factors that are coming into our adolescence.
Yeah. And it's almost like we don't invite our kids into the conversation. Like we'll tell them, like, don't count on being friends with somebody for the rest of your life. But we don't teach them how to prepare for that.
No,
And
because I don't know if I was prepared, and I still don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're asking them to make this really big decision that's going to potentially, possibly, especially if you have a kid in sports. I feel like those kids tend to get really pushed to go farther away to get to that school with that scholarship, you know.
Yeah.
And having to start your life over when you've never done it before is really hard. For some kids, it's like such a great adventure and they adapt really, really well. But I don't think that's true for all of them, especially, I mean, I'm going to put like a little caveat, like especially since COVID, because that just made things a whole lot more complicated with isolation. But I think that's a conversation that's worth having more. So I graduated high school in 2001 and I started massage school in 2005. It took me 4 years to figure out what I wanted to do. So I was a high school graduate that had dropped out of college 3 times just because I couldn't stand it. And I actually went to college a year early. My guidance counselor and my art teacher and my English teacher saw that I was not cut out for the box that high school put me in. So like, well, let's see if you do better on the college track. So I went to community college during my senior year of high school. And I loved it because my friends who had graduated were at the same community college. So it was like, oh, I get all this freedom. I was working during the day. It was great until reality set in that math was unavoidable. So when I started massage school in 2005, it was 4 years after I graduated high school. It was right around graduation time. So I graduated in February of 2007. And one of our teachers, she was our social skills and dynamics class, which there's a book called Social People Skills. I'll have to send you the link to it. It's very good. And as an adult, I really appreciated reading it because it helped you learn how to navigate relationships with people. Great for leaders to read. But she had said, or maybe it was my anatomy teacher, but one time, one of our teachers, she just totally blindsided us with, you're graduating soon. Don't expect these people to be in your life for the rest of your life. Look at your classmates. This might be one of the last times you see them ever. And I did not like hearing that because in a massage school, because there's only about maybe 15 of you in your class, you get really close.
Yeah.
And especially because you're like on the table and you don't have your clothes. Like, I mean, you're drinking stuff, but you get really intimate really quickly with the body, with the mind, with the somatics, like with everything. You just get very emotionally invested in the classmates that you're working with for nearly 2 years. And that nearly crushed me. I was like, no, this can't happen again. Not at this age. That can't be true. And she was not wrong. Most of them I've never seen again. But one of them, she and I celebrate our 20-year anniversary this year of having been together. We met in 2005, and this September will be our 20-year anniversary that we've been friends, and we've maintained a really close friendship for 20 years. So it is possible to find that person that you know will be your person for a long time, even when you're asked to recognize that these people, you'll never see them again. Because none of us lived in the same area.
So my last question is for you to go back and give some advice. You can give it to Jenny or you can give it to the teens today. What advice, now that you've gone back to your teenage experience and you've seen how it got you to where you are today, what advice would you give?
That's a really good question. I feel like I should have known that was coming. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need. And if they don't hear you the first time, it doesn't mean to stop asking. It means try a different way to ask the question. One thing I've learned is that not everyone translates the same way. Like, not all sentences seem to come across the right way to some people. And I know that's true for me. Sometimes I'll hear something, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But if you change it just a little bit, oh, okay, I get that. I think in my youth, I didn't know that I could ask twice. Or that if I asked the first time, I just expected it to happen. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you do need to ask twice. And sometimes you need to ask 3 times. Sometimes you need to get a little bit more creative. And I think you also need to know when to stop asking. So it kind of seems like a little double-edged in that, where don't be afraid to ask more than once for what you need, but also know when that person's actually not the one that's going to be able to give you what you need.
Yeah. That advice really aligns with something that somebody said about not everybody is equipped to help you in the way that you need the help. So maybe asking more than once of the same person, but knowing that there might and often is somebody else who may be more equipped to help you. So I really appreciate that advice. I have not heard that advice in that way, and I really love it.
Thanks.
Don't be afraid to ask and ask more than once.
Yeah, because it's a vulnerable thing to ask for what you need, right? Like, you're really putting yourself out there. You're really like carving away a part of yourself, saying, here, I'm exposing this to you, and I'm going to be willing to expose it again. And you're so right, because there is somebody out there that can meet that need, even if it's just yourself. But so I guess it's not so much the asking there and the repeat asking for the need. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to say, I have a need that needs to be met, and then find a healthy way to meet that need, whether it be from somebody else or within your own self. And I think, okay, so now I have this little teenage part coming up that's like super, I can do this myself, very independent. It doesn't mean that you have to be this hyper independent person. If you're meeting the need yourself, that's not what that means. It doesn't mean you have to go it alone. It just means at this time, you are the best person for the job.
Oh, I love that. So, Jenny, how can people find you? What are ways that they connect with you?
Best way is actually probably through my email at hello@jennyodell.me. I'm very responsive to email. I'm also on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. On Instagram, I'm Jenny Odell Embodiment in Bowen. That's a really long word, so I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes somewhere. So I am on social media. If you just Google my name, Jenny Odell, if an author pops up, that's not me. If it's a photographer, also not me. But if embodiment is in there somewhere, that's me. So I am definitely all over there. But if you send me an email, that's the best way to get started with an actual human being. And I'll definitely see it, because I have a love-hate relationship with social media. So I'm on it, but not really. So that's the best way.
This was such a great conversation.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Share it, and thank you so, so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Love it. This is great.
Are you ready to help the young people in your life unlock their inner strength and step confidently into leadership? The new workbook from Peers Not Fears, Your Voice Matters, Uncovering Your Unique Leadership. It's designed to help teens see the leader in themselves, step by step. It's not just a workbook. It's the first step towards a ripple effect that could change lives. Let's turn today's teens into tomorrow's titans. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit from this conversation. Together, we can support our teens in building healthy, positive relationships and become leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Lorraine Connell, and this is Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans.